Hello and welcome to another podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. Today we're back talking about Championship Manager FPL, and I'm joined by Luke, as always, of course. How are you doing?
Doing good. I'm doing good. I'm very tired. I stayed up till nearly 3 a.m. running sims on this game. I'm absolutely lost the plot, Andy. I need your help.
That's dedication. Dedication to the podcast, dedication to the game. That's what everyone wants to hear. I mean, I'll be honest, I stayed up doing zero Sims. I was playing Football Manager, though, so I was kind of in spirit playing a similar game. But yeah, how did your
Love
week
it.
go this week?
I ended up with 53 points after a hit. So quick maths, 57. Um, I was pretty happy with that because I think it's the average was about 47 or something. So a little bit above the average.
46, yeah, that was the average.
Okay, so yeah, always going to be happy when you're above the average. My team was a bit of a shambles this week. I had injuries all over. I didn't have a single player on my bench, so I really needed all 11 to start. So I was just happy to get through this one, to be honest with you, and yeah, better than I expected it to be. So hopefully, as I didn't pick up any injuries for the first time in yeah 4 weeks or something, I should be in a good position now next week. Is the hope anyway.
Yeah, I did all right. Although I thought I was doing really badly until all the final scores came in. I think a lot of my score got topped up with bonus points. There were so many bonus points that
Mm,
went around. I finished on 68.
lovely.
I took out Scowcroft though for a hit to get Veron. So it didn't really go too badly, but it wasn't. I don't think I'm up basically. I took out Scowcroft and Shearer for Saha and Veron. So Saha did get bonus points but didn't score, which was a bit annoying. But it is
Mm,
what it is. But I got super lucky. So I played Tarico. I didn't. After our talk last week on the pod, you were saying you probably wouldn't take too many transfers for 4.5 million defenders. I kind of agreed. I just didn't see the point. And plus, Ipswich got really good fixtures coming up. So I
mm.
left them. I've got Tarico and Bramble. So I played Tarico and put Bramble on the bench, and Tarico didn't show up. Bramble scored right at the death, I think it was. So he came on with
Nice.
8 points, and it just everyone seems to do. Johnson scored again. Van Nistelrooy captain. Bonus for Sylvester. Pedersen scored. I got Pedersen in for his good fixtures. He scored again. So yeah, I did all right. 68. But yeah, Johnson scored again. So
Mm.
Middlesbrough is a topic that come up because it feels like, or at least with the questions we got, a lot of people still don't have Middlesbrough players, even though they're doing so well. Obviously, Boxic did okay and then got injured, but he's back. And Johnson just seems to keep on scoring. So they did lose, though. I think a lot of people thought they were going to do better against Fulham. They lost 2-1. What did you make of this match? Obviously, Johnson on the score sheet again, in a bit of form, which I know you love.
Yeah, it was a really interesting one before the deadline because obviously when you look at it through the eyes of form, you would say that Middlesbrough are probably going to win that one as they're top of the league and flying, and Fulham had been dreadful in the last few games. However, just going on Fulham as a team, they're often incredibly open, and at home they can be lethal. They can basically beat anyone at home. They just go all out attack. Um, but obviously, in the same breath, they can then lose games very easily because they're just so open. So it was always a bit erratic on paper as to what was going to happen in that one. They're both quite low reputation teams. So basically, I thought they'd go swinging and it could go either way. So I was quite happy to see Fulham win because obviously it goes against the form thing. And, people were dropping all their assets all over the place. But it's another one of those things where I don't really think the form comes into it. I think Fulham assets are great prices. And because they're such an offensive team, you can get points in any game essentially, just completely out of the blue. So with Johnson himself as well, just scoring again. I mean, I don't know if you've got that spreadsheet I sent you, Andy, that we can put up
Yeah, I
at the
got it up.
time, but sweet. So with him, I crunched loads of numbers on loads of different players at different price points before the season started. And hopefully that's up in front of you now. Johnston was a standout pick for me in a lot of ways. First of all, he plays nearly every game, so he's one of the most nailed on players in midfield, which is really tough to find actually for the offensive midfield players. Apart from, I mean, even if you go premium Veron and stuff, he's not completely nailed. So he instantly stood out there. And he was also very, very, very consistent. So if you look down the goals tab, you can see that he was always in and around, sort of 4.3 goals as his average at the bottom. Now, when we talk about players, I always talk about the averages, but there's always outliers in a season. You get certain seasons where suddenly they jump. So with him, you can see he's got one goal in one of the seasons, then he's got eight. So his biggest sort of jump was around 7 goals. Now that's pretty consistent because most of the players there are wild swings. And with him, there wasn't really that much. So not only did he come out as the best midfielder on for point predictions, anywhere up to 8.5 million, he was beating everyone above and below, which made him the standout pick for me before the season started, but he was also consistent. So it just everything sort of waited to have him as a great pick, and he's turned out to be a great pick. Now, obviously, he's on a bit of an outlier at the moment, you'd say, because I think he's on 5 goals and 5 assists, which, when you go by his goals tab at the moment, that's after 38 games, 37 games, 36 games. So not only is he incredibly inconsistent, probably the best pick before the season, but he also looks to be on one of those outlier seasons, which can happen. There's one there with 8 goals, 11 assists, which was a particular fantastic season. So I guess there's 2 ways to look at this now. He's always been a good option. He is still a great option. And he potentially is in an outlier season where he's going to outperform any of the ones that I recorded, which could happen. Or you could look at it from the other angle and say he's used up all his goals and assists now. He'll die off and he'll sort of revert to the mean. Now, I don't know which. It depends who you are as to what you buy into on that. I think he's just a good option regardless. And I think he's the standout pick, 8.5 million or below, and even including 8.5 million midfielders at the moment, because Kuhl and Morte aren't doing that much. So my view is you have to probably get him, and it's not necessarily to do with form. It's just that he's a great pick.
Yeah, I think like for me, I maybe you might be different, but I'm still struggling to find like a bunch of midfielders that I really like around that £7-8 million price point. And Sunderland at home up next. Yes, they got Man United, which is tough after that, but it is at home. And then it's Villa, Ipswich, Southampton. So the fixtures were pretty good. He's a decent price. We got quite a few questions about best Middlesbrough assets and stuff like that. So Richard Nickvist asked that, Luke Porteous as well. So, he's got to be up there, right? Johnston, probably one of the best picks. What do you think about their other options? Because defensively, they're pretty sound as well. And obviously, Boksic is back now. So is it worth just getting him straight back in, do you think?
Yeah, I think they, like Fulham, they offer a lot of good players at good prices. With Middlesbrough, it's obviously helped that they've been doing better than Fulham, so they've been more stood out to people, I guess. But for them, I think the best pick is, I'd definitely have Johnston there, because it's also to do with who he competes with in other teams and stuff, and he just smashed nearly all the competition out the water. So I really do like him. I think my next go-to would probably be Gordon. Pre-season, it's not known whether Gordon will be nailed, and it's not known whether he will play left wing. There's a lot of different things that have to happen for that to occur. So that makes his seasons erratic, and his average comes down as a result. However, he did have outliers when he was left wing and played most of the time. So now we know that's pretty much happening. I think he's one of the better ones to use. I've got a video coming out in the next couple of days which looks at the players that have got key attributes in the right areas to get assists, basically. And spoiler alert, Gordon's on that list, who basically can get them regardless, as long as he's given the game time and the position. So I'm very confident with Gordon that will continue to happen. He's not totally nailed. He could get benched on the odd game, but I still think you just have to go with him, just because of that potential that he offers. With Festa, who I also think is probably the third one I go to. I think it depends how your team's set out. I really like Gordon and Johnston, and then I'll go to either Festa or Boksic, and it really can depend, how your team's set up. It's pretty much because there's not many competition for those two guys at those price points. Festa at 5 million is obviously on penalties, can do very well for bonus. There's no one really standing out. You could argue you could drop him to a 4.5 who's doing pretty good. So I can understand that. And obviously Festa's returns, because they're a little bit more reliant on a random factor, because obviously Gordon's assists from open play is quite consistent. He can do that all the time, whereas Festa's more goals from penalties, which could be anything from none the rest of the season to 6. So a little bit more random. And then Boksic playing up front has got competition like Saha. There's a few others around that price, 7.5 Pedersen. It's more of an interchangeable slot potentially with a few options with fixtures and form. I think probably edge to Festa is one of those two. With Crossley, you've got Seaman, who's 0.5 more. He's also a great pick in his individual right, but when you look at Seaman, you think, well, for 0.5 more, I get a slightly tighter defence, who's offering pretty much the same. So I think those would be my picks, if that made sense.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I've got Seaman and Crossley, because at the start I wasn't too sure about whether, even though he looked nailed, obviously there was still a bit of doubt about Seaman, but he seems to be fine. So I haven't really needed Crossley that much, but I haven't been, that worried about benching Seaman if Crossley has the better fixture, because Middlesbrough were pretty decent defensively. One quick question, which is, I'll be honest, it's a selfish question for me, with Saha, because you said before, once he gets into the team, often the AI realises he's a really good player, and they keep playing him. Do you think that's going to happen, or is it's just one game, so it's too early to tell?
Yeah, I really hope it does. I mean, anyone who's run Sims will tell you that when Saha's given game time, he's just ridiculously good. I mean, he gets bought by Real Madrid often because he's that good. So I really hope it's the case. The thing is, we're never really going to know until Marley comes back whether they've decided it's one of his Sims. Because the other option is Saha sometimes will just not play for Fulham the whole season. Like he will get a few
Jeez.
sub appearances and just not play. And it doesn't seem to be any particular reason why. The AI just favours having Marley and Boa Morte up top and just decides he's not worth his spot, which is just madness because he's one of the best strikers in the game potentially in certain areas. His only weak stat, in fact, is off the ball, which is a really important stat for forwards, which is a bit weird because I think in real life Saar was pretty mobile and running around quite a lot. So I don't know why he's got a low stat there. But it might be the AI sees that and just decides it's not good enough for the way they want to set up. I don't know if it's that advanced. I doubt it. So we're not going to know is basically the answer until Marley comes back. I'd like to think that now he's gone in and he played well again. He's played well in every appearance so far, and he will continue to play well even in tough fixtures. I think I haven't run the Sims personally, but another guy who's running them and sort of feeding back to me says that in every Sim he's done so far of Fulham versus Ipswich, Saha's managed to score a goal. So if you've got him, potentially you can pull one out of the bag there. And I, for one, really hope he stays in the team because he suddenly becomes a great option at 6.5. But no way to know, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my thing. The only thing is the fixtures aren't very good after that Ipswich game, so it's going to be a bit of a tough one whether to keep him or not. But 6.5 million, I guess, there's not too much, too much risk there.
The only thing I'll really say on that is that it's like I said at the beginning, the fixtures don't matter as much for Fulham, I think, because they're one of those teams that they're not like Blackburn, for example, who got a tough game and then play 7-2-1. They pretty much go for it every game. So they could lose 5-0 in one of those games, but they could also, lose 5-3 and Saha gets 2 or 3 goals. So Fulham a little bit less of a fixtures team than most, I think.
Cool. I'll keep him then for now. All right, let's move on to Man United. So there's a bit of late drama here. So some people, myself included, brought Varane in, and I got to be honest, I was worried going into the last few minutes of this game. Johnson got injured in 47 minutes. There's that to talk about as well. Van Nistelrooy scored again, but yeah, Varane getting a late goal. And Beckham doing nothing in this one. I get that it's just one game, so there's no point in worrying about it. What did you make of this one, though? I think 3 goals is kind of what you expected, right?
Yeah, we I ran 25 sims of the game to see what was likely to occur. Initially I was quite surprised that Man United didn't slaughter them because obviously they got the best attack and Southampton got the worst defence away. So I was expecting when I ran through it, and I'd already made my bed before this by going double United attack, that they didn't score as many. I mean, they were still scoring a reasonable amount. I think the most common amount of goals scored was 3, which happened, but I was hoping it was going to be 4 or 5. So when I've sat there spending a quarter of my budget on Varane and Van Nistelrooy, and then I'm thinking, well, the max goals they're probably going to get here is 3. I was a bit worried going into this game because obviously they've got to have a piece of it. But turns out in the 90th minute, dramatic fashion from the guys there, Varane hitting I think he'd hit the bar in the game earlier as well.
Yeah,
he'd done something not going. It's just not going for him. But yeah, he got it. I think the only real surprise was that Southampton managed to score. I mean, they kept 20 clean sheets in 25 games. So in those 5, they conceded 1. So we hit one of those where they scored 1. Apart from that, it seemed to go pretty much as expected. Beckham didn't seem to do too well in this matchup. He did okay, but not that well. However, I've done the same now for Bolton coming up, and Beckham fares very, very well in that matchup. So I think over these they've got quite a number of good games, Man United, over the next sort of 4 or 5. I think the time to review it really is going to be the end of that and see, who was the best pick over that period rather than just after this one. Varane's got the one up for now, but Beckham could come roaring back.
Yeah, there's probably no point chopping and changing too much. And I guess, Johnson out is probably not going to affect the clean sheet chances too much, I'd say.
No, they often rotate that spot anyway. And Johnson's got 20 for injury proneness, so you'll see this all season. He'll come in and out of the team all the time, and it will happen nearly every sim anyone runs because of that fact. So, should be no difference, really.
Just that, and we're going to talk about Southampton a little bit more later on. So stay tuned for that. There's some pretty big news coming up. But we'll go from one bit of drama for on to another. Arsenal. This is just super frustrating if you're a Thierry Henry owner. I even saw that I think Tom from Who Got the Assist and a couple of others even bought him in this week. I think. I could have that wrong, but obviously there's quite a few people owning him. Sent off in the 68th minute. Now, I won't make the same mistake I made in the last pod. He is going to play the next game. against Derby at home. So great fixture, probably worth keeping for if you've got him. And then he's going to miss Sunderland at home, which was the next really good game in game week 13. So there was a couple of, obviously we can talk about that in general in a sec, but there's a couple of questions as well on Jeffers, because he keeps starting out anyway, and obviously Henry's going to miss the next game, so you'd think he's probably nailed for that. So it's a 2-week punt. Derby Sunderland looks pretty good. What do you think about beyond that? Is he worth bringing in at this point?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff has interested me before this game started, because he'd been playing quite a few games, and with Jeffers, I think he's 5.5 million, which is an incredibly good price for an Arsenal forward. The thing he struggled with is the fact that they've got Kanu, Bergkamp, and Henry is generally nailed. So you've got 3 players for one spot. Now Bergkamp can play in midfield, so sometimes he drips in and out. And Kanu's not particularly good in the game. So Jeffers normally does claim that spot, so to speak, but ends up with like 20, 25 games a season in his best ones, sometimes gets less. So, I mean, they've priced him at that price for a reason, I guess, is that obviously he's not nailed. However, in this sim, he's been playing a little bit more. And when he does play, he's actually got really good attributes for finishing. He's got 20 for finishing. He's got a lot of key attributes which are good for just a fox in the box, which is what he always was, if you remember. So I do kind of like him, especially now Henry's out. There's a very good chance that he will play. In fact, I'd say it's very close to like 90%, because he's been their next best forward. The problem is, I think he may have just got injured in the League Cup. I don't know how long he's out for now. I'm pretty sure they released that this morning, that he's picked it up in the League Cup. And the length of injury will obviously dictate as to whether he's worth going to. So I'm not 100% sure how long he's out for. If he is out, then obviously you can't be going there. So it's going to come down to that.
Yeah,
I think.
I've just had a look, because we are, although we're not doing this live, we are kind of like treating it as it's live while we record it. So I literally just looked there. Yeah, he got injured on the 18th minute. So we're gonna basically, if you're listening to this and they haven't released the info, you're gonna have to wait until they release the info. If he's gonna be fit to play, then I guess he's a good option for 5.5 million. But if he's gonna be out, then there's no obvious reason to get him in. If he's out though, and Henry's gonna miss something at home. I assume like Bergkamp maybe for a punt or someone like that. Would he come in up front?
Yeah, it'll probably. I mean, they don't change formation, so it'll be Kanu and Bergkamp if Kanu's fit as well. It'll be those two that play up top. They usually sub one of them at some point during the game, so you might get Pires or someone go up top potentially. But hopefully, it's just a minor knock and Jeffers is back. And I think with those games, he's a nice differential. I think long term you can't rely on him, but if Henry's out, then yeah, why not?
Yeah, we got a question coming up about Pedersen. I also own him and looking to get rid of him. And if he's fit, I might just go for a 2-week punt and then worry about it then, because I really like in those cheap forward spots just to rotate for the fixtures. So I'm looking at that. Really quick one on Henry, and I'm assuming this is going to be yes. Surely he's a keep for Derby, right? There's no reason, unless you've got a massive transfer to do instead. Surely you keep.
Yeah, all day. You keep him for Derby all day. I mean, I'd even consider just benching for Sunderland if you can get away with it. There's quite a lot of good fixtures on that day. Your team can maybe get, and then he's straight back for Fulham away, which I think is better than it looks on paper, because we already discussed Fulham and how open they can be. And then potentially he's Tottenham at home, and then maybe a double in 16. So if you get away with benching in 13, I'd even consider it. Obviously, for a 1-week swap, you've got lots of players who've got a good. I mean, Shearer, many will have sold because of his suspensions home to Tottenham. That's a good game. You've got Southampton assets we might be looking at, as we're going to come up to soon, and Chelsea are at home to Fulham on that day, which is not. They haven't been great, Chelsea, but home to Fulham is an absolutely plum fixture. So yeah, there's plenty of 1-week swaps if you want to hokey cokey him in and out again.
Cool. And we'll go on injury. So these are the injury news we've got. Obviously, Jeffers is almost breaking news at this point, as Jeff Stenham would say. But we have got some injuries that they've already let us know about. So there's obviously 6 we don't need to spend ages on them, but it's just really kind of how they're going to affect the team, if at all, and also who you think, whether they should be replaced, or, players like Goma, maybe they're cheap enough to kind of just keep for now. But Goma's out for 2 weeks, Kuhl's out for 2 weeks, Ferdinand's out for 3 weeks, Gallas, Heskey and Johnson all 1 month. So is there anyone there that's really going to affect the team, or there's going to be like a replacement that comes in that you think is going to be really good now they're out?
I think in most of those cases, I mean, Goma's 2 weeks. I mean, it's not going to be worth it. At this point, we're having to deal with injuries and red cards nearly every single week. So I think if you're interchanging defenders for sort of short periods, he's just going to cause you all sorts of issues. So that's one to bench. I mean, if you've literally got no other option, Ipswich has still got fantastic home games. So I just jumped straight to an Ipswich defender there. Kuhl's also 2 weeks, 8.5 million. I think it would just be, the answer would be just take money out of midfield. I don't think that slot's really performing. So you come down to Johnston or even Collins, 5.5 for Fulham. I don't think you pay attention to fixtures really for that slot for me. You just kind of put a player in who's going to play every game and focus on those high point potential players for your swaps. With Rio, likely Woodgate or Dubry comes in, who's 4.5, so it's around $1 million cheaper, and it's about 3 weeks. So if you're completely set on having a Leeds defender, I suppose you could do that. I don't really like their fixtures though. And with Gallas a month out, nothing really changes for Chelsea. They've been rotating their defenders pretty much all season. They've got a number of them that can play there. Desai is also 5.5 and is the better pick anyway. So again, if you're set on having that option, I just do the direct swap to Desai. The Heskey one's really annoying. Again, the AI has played a player when he's not fit. So on this orange flag, I mean, in the League Cup of all, when they didn't even need to do it. And he's gone out injured when they've got pretty much no other forwards. Now, we've been quite lucky with orange flags the last couple of days. We've had Tarico play, not this week, but last week on an orange flag, and he made the 90. I think he was the first player to do so. Stolz's also played that week on an orange, and he made the 90, and Kinsella on an orange and made it. So suddenly it looked like these orange flag players can do it, and they can go all the way through. And then this week we had a lot of players running on lottery. Selakovic was one of them. He made it. At the end of the day, you never know whether they're going to make it if they're orange flags. And Heskey's gone out for a month. Liverpool are now down to, I think, just Fowler. And Heskey was potentially a really good option for the next few, because usually his issues rotation, and he wouldn't have had much competition due to the fact they got no players, and they potentially had some double game weeks, and he's quite a good price, and he can do really well. So they've stolen an asset from us there, unfortunately, I think. So he's probably the headline news for people who are looking at the fixtures and to play the doubles with Liverpool. Annoying. Just have to keep looking out for that.
Yeah, they've had a pretty bad time. And you already mentioned Johnson is they rotate that spot anyway, and chances are you're probably not buying him. Just a really quick one on Gallas. You said obviously Chelsea are rotating their defenders a lot. Are any of their defenders nailed, like week in, week out, or is it literally a lottery, even with like Desai?
Desai's nailed. Yeah, he plays like 36 games out of 38, so that's nailed as far as I'm concerned. He's pretty much the only one. Terry usually becomes nailed the second half of the season, but he's really young in the game. He's at 20 years old. And Gallas can be nailed, but suffers from erratic performances, fives and stuff, which we've already seen this sim, and therefore ends up not being favoured by the AI quite a lot of the time. So Melchiot is the go-to still at 5 million. I think he may be back now. He was injured as well, so I think he could be back. He's very likely to play now. The problem is it might be at centre back rather than right wing back, which is the slot you want him in. They've got such good games, and he's still a good price. It still might be worth chancing him. But apart from that, I don't really see any options in Chelsea's defence.
Yeah, no, it was really the fixtures you mentioned why I kind of mentioned it. Blackburn, Fulham and Bolton all at home in the next 4. I know you were saying like Fulham are quite open, but I mean, if you're going to target home games, that's pretty decent. And Blackburn, with the setup they do away from home, almost feels like a pretty nailed on clean sheet. So maybe Gallas to Desai or something like that. If you own Gallas, could be a straight swap. Next up, we've got kind of everyone's, most people's favourite topic, double game week. So I've brought the fixtures up here, although it's not on the sheet yet because we only kind of got this news just before we were going to do the podcast. So Southampton and Villa have got a double game week in game week 15. So Villa are already playing Everton away, so they'll play Southampton as well. And then Southampton, I assume they're playing each other. Southampton got Blackburn at home. And then obviously they'll play Villa as well. So the key question that people are going to have, even though they've not asked us because they don't know this is coming, is are there any players worth jumping on? So I had a quick look. So Southampton before the double game week, we've actually got pretty nice fixtures. So Leicester at home, Derby at home, and then Ipswich away. Villa is a bit trickier, I guess. Spurs at home, Ipswich away, and Middlesbrough at home. So 2 home games, but there's Spurs and Middlesbrough. So let's start with Southampton. Are there kind of any players there that you think might be okay? I was kind of looking towards the front line. Again, like Pedersen replacement, stuff like that. We've got poor fixtures coming up. Parhas, Kevin Davis, maybe.
Yeah, exactly that. I think that's quite a nice fixture run now. Really nice, really. I mean, home to Leicester and home to Derby, they're really good games. Ipswich away is pretty tough, like you said. And then Blackburn at home, we already know what Blackburn often. I mean, Southampton are also a pretty low reputation team, so there's a chance Blackburn don't deploy their ultra defensive one in that, but it's still a pretty good game, I think. And then obviously they'll play Villa as well, who anything can happen when you play them. So I do really like him, and I think Svensson is still the standout at 6 million. He's a nice price for anyone who has been talking about taking money out of midfield and not happy with their performing assets. I think he's probably going to be the go-to now. You just get him in straight away from this week. You got a nice run of fixtures and a double for him. He's completely nailed and often takes set pieces. So he's easily the standout pick for me. And I think a lot will be covering him as a result. And then in this sim, Kevin Davies at 5 million has just been great. I mean, he often loses out to Beattie and ends up being a sub player, and Beattie's their main man alongside Parhas. But that's not worked out. And Davies actually takes penalties quite a lot of the time for Southampton. Svensson can as well, but Davies is usually the one who does. So at 5 million for Davies and 6 million for Svensson, I think you've got everything you really need to cover it if you want to go that far into it. I mean, the debate's going to be similar to Charlton, I think, where how many double game week assets do you get in when the teams aren't particularly good, and then after the doubles, you then have to focus on getting them out, potentially. So it's going to be interesting to see what the community does. I think those two are the standout for Southampton, though. They've got a few, the defenders, there are a few quite nice players who get quite a lot of bonus. You can see on Whitebeard's stat tables who they are. And there's even people like Petrescu who can potentially play in midfield at 4.5 and bomb on, and it can be good for goals and assists. It's just the defence is so leaky. It's the worst in the league most of the time. So I don't really have any faith going there, as I don't think you're going to get clean sheets, really.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, after the double game week, it is Middlesbrough away, Liverpool at home, so it's already pretty tricky straight away, so you probably don't want to load up too much. Is there any reason at the moment, the way it's kind of panned out so far, to spend the extra money on Parhas up front instead of Davies?
I don't think so. I think when they both play, I mean, regardless of the price, Davies scores more goals than Parhas. So even disregarding price, I think basically if you're paying that extra money, you're essentially paying it to get the nailedness, to know that BT won't randomly come in, because it won't be Parhas that drops out, or very unlikely to be Parhas that drops out. I've got multiple sims where Parhas actually plays 38 games, which is incredibly unheard of out of 38. However, I'm just going to read one off from looking to you right now. 38 games, 3 goals, 9 assists. Not really what you want from
yeah, not prolific, I would say. All right, so probably not worth taking this. And to be honest, I guess if you can get a double game week player who's nailed with good fixtures before, well, not nailed, but doing well so far for minutes and got good fixtures before, why not just take the money and run?
I suppose the sort of the thing that could come out of nowhere is, let's say randomly the AI puts BT in instead of Davies early, so now like Leicester or Derby, and he does well and scores, and then they play him the week after. He is a player who can score. I mean, I've seen him in the top 5, 6, 7 for goals scored at the end of the season, incredibly. So maybe we could get a differential throwaway, but until it happens, it's nothing to think about.
Cool. And what about Aston Villa? I mean, a lot of people obviously still holding and will be holding for probably the whole season, Staunton. But is there anyone else worth even looking at in the Villa team?
I mean, in terms of differentials, Juan Pablo Engel is just a very, very consistent player across sims. He can score multiple goals. He's not particularly done well this sim, but it's one of those ones, if you want to just risk it and throw him in, he could do well. He is pretty much a standout player for them. He's their talisman, really. Apart from that, for Villa, it's pretty much Staunton. The only other one that I think could be of interest is Schmeichel, because a lot of people will be in a position, I think you are yourself, where you've got a 4.5 you're not particularly using. And a lot of people have that issue where they've had Serini get red carded. And I think if you've got a vanity transfer, bringing in Schmeichel is a pretty good option, because if you look, they've got a home game to Middlesbrough on 14. They've then got this double in 15. So Schmeichel's bound to play both of those. Then they're home to Newcastle 16, home to West Ham 17, and then home to Arsenal 18, which again, it's just a 3 home fixtures in a row after that Everton one, after the double. Suggests to me that he could be valued at 4.5 million. You can get bonus points in all those. And, if it's one of those throwaway slots that you've not been using, it's potentially an option.
Yeah, good option. Plus, Seaman in that game week 15 as well, he plays Spurs at home. So, again, not the easiest fixture, although it is at home. And like you said before, Arsenal got a pretty good defence. So, yeah, might be worth looking at. All right, so, yeah, double game week is happening. And we'll just finish off with some questions. So there's quite a few actually this week. So we won't be able to get to all of them, but we've still got a lot to go through. So we'll maybe do a bit more quick fire. So Mr. Hindsight was the first one. Best Luis Boas Morte replacement. Says Johnson's the obvious pick, or is there a sneaky differential? So you mentioned Svensson. We've already talked about Johnston. I guess 2 points. One, who would you go for if you were getting rid, and would you even get rid?
I think I would probably get rid of Boa Morte just because the games aren't particularly good now for the Fulham for a little while. I do still think he's a fantastic pick at 8.5, but he's already mentioned there. Johnston 7's the obvious pick. Now we've got Svensson, I think, who's the other standout pick at that dropping down price. And then apart from that, I think you just need to divert money out of midfield. So if you're looking for a structure to fund Shearer or Henry when he comes back or something, you need to be looking at Collins and Stolzers at Fulham at 5.5. They're just some of the best value picks in the game.
There you go. Nice, quick and easy. Next one. This one will be quick too. Tauha, and again, apologies if I'm butchering names. Tauha Nadeem talks about Jimmy Floyd, Hasselbank, or Ida Good Johnson. Is it likely that one will heavily outscore the other, or is it much of a much, i.e. a coin toss? And I guess if you were picking one right now, we've already mentioned their fixtures are pretty good. Which one would you go for?
I'm always going to go to Jimmy just because in nearly every sim I've run, Jimmy will outscore Good Johnson. It's very, very rare the other way around. I know Good Johnson's outscoring Jimmy in our sim, but I don't really care about that. I just go with what I've seen in other areas. So I think he's only 0.5 more. So I think there's no point chancing it. I'd just go Jimmy personally, and would expect that he would outscore him. Chelsea have been absolutely woeful, and the thing to watch out for now is they've got a really good run coming up. So maybe they can turn it round, but they often sack their manager if it doesn't go well at the very beginning. So let's say they lose against Blackburn, they could suddenly have a new manager, and that means new formations, and therefore new players come into the fore. Like Zenden's a left mid, for example, he doesn't get a look in, but quite often they'll sign a 4-4-2 manager where suddenly he becomes nailed at the left wing. So there's all sorts of things to look out for them. Short answer, Jimmy, for me.
All right, cool. Plus, he's got the better name. Although it's not often you get two strikers like that. With both, they both have great names. To be honest, Idiger Johnson's decent, but Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank wins out on that regard for sure. Next one, FPL Toddler. Probably not the first to ask this, or I think he was the first to ask, at least in the tweet that I put out. Is it worth keeping Salakovic for one more game week? Let me just quickly give you my opinion first until we get the pro to give the opinion. I had him. I've got rid of him now. And I think he is one of those players where there was a lot of hype because he is a great player in the game and other sims. But in this sims, it's just not happening. Even Poirier has done, I think he's done better since Salakovic come in. Not that he's done better, he's just done better versus Salakovic. And I feel like he's going to be one of those players. They'll always just be holding him for one more week. And he'll never get the returns, but he'll always think the next week is the week. So I just think he's just not worth the money while he's playing in that centre mid position. Simple as that. What do you think?
I completely agree, Andy. I completely agree. The thing with Slakovic is he's one of those players that you could sign when you play the game, and when you managed him, he was pretty much fantastic. He's one of those cheap people you can buy, and no matter what save, no matter what team you're playing, well, not obviously some of the lower division teams you couldn't sign for him, but quite a lot you could, and he would just be excellent. But under the control of the AI, playing him as a centre midfielder, it's just a catastrophe, really. He has got some reasonable attributes to play that role. There's certain key ones you need for a centre midfielder, and he ticks a lot of the boxes. The problem is none of them are the defensive ones. So I think he's being asked to do some defensive work, and he's got woeful stats in that area. So the reason why he gets fives a lot is, his tackling, his strength, is all the things that you would associate with like Roy Keane, aggression, all the things you need to play in centre midfield are really, really low. And then obviously when he goes against the opponent, he's next to a player who has got stats in all those areas, because any team, doesn't matter who they are, will probably be playing a defensive midfielder in that centre midfield slot. So even the very worst defensive midfielders in the league are better than him when they match up against him. And as a result, his average rating suffers. He's basically relying on penalties or worldy 30-yarders, which he's got in his locker, he can do. But for 8 million and playing that role, I just think you just can't do it, unfortunately. And he's not getting bonus, which is, like we've already said, bonus matters so much in this game. And when a lot of the other midfielders are, I think you just have to get rid of him. As soon as he does start playing AMC, if it's ever even going to happen. I mean, it happens in nearly every other sim. This is the surprising thing. then he suddenly completely changes. But I think once you see that happen, we can always react to it. So I'm with you. I think we get rid.
Yeah, I just think we've already kind of talked about cheap midfielders. We don't have to go through that again. Villa away, like you could maybe keep him for that, but I just think you're always going to be one more week. The good thing is the next 4 fixtures are not amazing, so if he does happen to suddenly go into that number 10 position, then they've got a really good run from game week 16, and you can just maybe get him back in. And kind of on that point, because we've already spoken about Johnson, etc. So the next question from Luke Porteous is we've already talked about Middlesbrough, so we'll ignore that. But Ipswich assets, I mean, their fixture run is pretty incredible with the amount of home fixtures they've got coming up. Ipswich in general, Bramble, Tarico, we'll probably talk about again. But is there any midfielders that you can maybe look at outside of the ones, the other teams that you've already mentioned, or just a no-no for Ipswich?
It's just the fact that they rotate all their spots. I think, yeah, I'd love to be able to go for one. I think Fanidi's the guy who can obviously play up top and therefore can get some goals for you. Jermaine Wright at 5 million is just a very consistent pick. He's going to be value at 5 million. I mean, if he's a player you're benching, I mean, I've got a 5 million on my bench in Biscan. So if Wright is your 5 million on your bench, then great. You could use him in those games and play him. But I certainly wouldn't bring him in because even he can end up playing centre back, right wing back, left wing back. It's the obvious names. I think it's the Bramble, the Heridas, and the Taricos. I'm not sure if Matt Holland's fit or not. I can't remember, but he's quite expensive in the game. He is the go-to though. I've had seasons where he gets 9 goals, 9 assists and plays like 34, which is fairly good. It's just I would see him more as a 6.5 midfielder, and he's 7.5 in the game. However, none of that matters if you're targeting these 3 fixtures. If you're targeting Fulham at home, Villa at home, Southampton at home, I mean, we've seen it already for multiple teams when these sort of average teams have got a nice fixture run. Scowcroft's an example, Sturridge is an example. They can fire in these games and they'll get quite a lot of their points in them. So if you have to get a midfielder, the most nailed is Holland, and Fanidi's my punt, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, I've already got double Ipswich defence. I don't know if I'm going to be able to play him each week, but like you keep mentioning about the bonus, they're so good for it, and they've got potential for goals or whatever. So that's where I am. So that's Ipswich covered. A few more questions. So I mean, best Pedersen replacements. I've kind of already touched on it a few times. Even I actually have him, and I am looking at moving him on. I think because it's Man United away next, and I really just targeted the fixtures, and they just don't really have them now. They just don't. Man United, Everton, Chelsea, Arsenal in the next 5 is just awful. Yeah. So I personally, he's got 1.5 million in the bank, so I think Pedersen's 7.5. So you can take him up to 9. I'm looking at Jeffers potentially as a 2-week punt if he's fit. We'll have to wait for news on that. Otherwise, I'm not really sure. I've got Saha. I'll probably actually go to Kevin Davis, to be honest. Southampton's run's pretty good, and they got that double game. What do you think for Pedersen replacements?
Yeah, exactly that. I think Jeffers and Davis, with the news of the double, are really, really good. Also, if you've got a third Man United slot, Dwight Yorke, home to Bolton. Again, not completely nailed, but in the sims I've run, Dwight Yorke has done incredible in that game. He's still yet to score or assist, so it's going to take some faith for people to believe in the sim rather than the form. But as a 1-week punt, I don't think there's many better in the game. He had 19 games against Bolton on Sims, and he scored 18 goals, the same as Dwight Yorke. For some reason, because Bolton play 3 at the back, obviously 5 at the back with 2 wing backs, but 3 right at the back. And when a team with 3 at the back plays away and tries to play defensive, it seems to cause all sorts of issues against a team who plays 4-4-2, and they just can't handle it. So Chelsea, for example, who when they play away and try to defend, like against Leeds, I was expecting that to be quite a high-scoring game. I think they got battered and just held on because Cudicini got like a 9. But for Bolton, they don't really have those good defenders to cope with it. So if Yorke starts, I think he is the best 1-week punt, like by a long shot. The problem is obviously Andrew Cole could come in and suddenly it's a waste of a transfer. So it's one of those ones.
But that's it. High risk potentially. Yeah, high risk potentially. High reward. Yeah, I think that match looks pretty damn good for Man United. And I think Van Nistelrooy will be massively captain, although you can't go from Pedersen to him probably. So next one was quite a long one actually. So Auba, Aubameyang, FPL was going to get Henry for game week 12, but following the red card doesn't want to do it because obviously it's just 1 week then. So one of the Chelsea premiums, if so, which one? You already answered that. You'd go for Hasselbank, or would you just go back to Shearer instead?
I'll go back to Shearer.
You like Shearer, don't you? I've owned him. He didn't really do that well for me. I know form is not a thing, etc., but I wasn't that impressed with him.
Well, I think Shearer scored in every home game so far that he's played. He's got 2 home games versus Leeds and Tottenham, who the beauty of them is they will attack even when they're away. So the game will be very open. Now that can result in Newcastle getting beaten by them and Shearer doing nothing, but it can also result in crazy games with crazy amount of goals. And he's on penalties. That's the bonus in this. We've been through it before in this game. And penalties are so frequent and random that you can. He's one of those players, Shearer, who can score 5 or 6 goals in a game because he ends up getting 2 or 3 penalties along with his just normal ability to score 20 to 30 goals a season. So to me, there's no contest. It's Shearer, and he's a long-term pick for me. He's one of the ones you can just leave in. Whereas Jimmy maybe has the better games for these two, but then you always worry that he's then not a pick after that because their games become a bit worse, and Chelsea are obviously in dire straits. Might change their manager. There's all sorts of issues with them afterwards. So still Shearer for me.
Yeah, you're being consistent. You said that to me before. Basically, when he's fit, he's almost he is one of the best strikers in the game, and he's 10 million, so he's a lot cheaper than the likes of Van Nistelrooy and Henry. I don't know if I can go back there, but I guess if you're looking at versus Chelsea premiums, then that's probably the way to go. And lastly, we'll finish on Arsenal. So they've got again the next 2 fixtures we've already spoken about, and quite a lot are really decent. People, Chris Hermitage looking at an Arsenal triple up. Who would you go for? Seems midfield rotates a lot. And then the Nurag asked similar question. Already has Campbell and Seaman, and is seriously thinking about an Arsenal defensive triple up. How many Arsenal players have you got? Because I've got Seaman and Cole, and I might get Jeffers. So that would be probably my triple up. And some of that is to do with price, but. Would you be looking at a triple up in defence or a triple up anywhere else outside of defence?
I think it's valid. I mean, Arsenal were the second best team in this game nearly every single sim. They hadn't been that great up till now. They obviously lost Vieira and there was a bit erratic. But I think they're starting to show that they are back to where they should be. I think Seaman's just the best keeper to get in the game now at 5 million. As long as he's playing games, I don't think anyone can really argue with that. He's obviously got the clean sheet potential. He can make saves. He's actually got the best stats in the key areas for a goalkeeper in the league out of every goalkeeper. So he's technically the best goalkeeper at the league, even at 38 years old. So Seaman is a definite nail for me. I think then one of Campbell or Cole is absolutely fine, or both of them is absolutely fine. They've got these home games. I expect they'll get clean sheets. They've obviously got other things in their locker. Campbell potentially has got penalties. He's not totally nailed Campbell, but penalties obviously it looks good, and they're not. Ashley Cole is nailed and has assists in his locker. You saw one of the assists already he got the other day where he burst past the fullback and then put in a cross. That's something Ashley Cole's got in his locker, is his pace. He bombs on, he's got pace, acceleration and agility, and all those contribute to him being able to get past the fullback and knock a cross in, which is really, really useful stat in this game. So I really like him. And I think obviously the perfect trio would include Henry if he's fit, wouldn't it? It's going to be Henry for me, Cole, and then Seaman. However, the triple up defence, I'm strongly looking at as well. I've got the same 2 as you, Cole and Seaman. Was going to be Henry. Now he's out. I've got some thinking to do, and maybe I'll just go straight to Campbell instead. I don't really think you can touch any of the midfielders. Like they're just too.
Even Tikhonov got rotated this week as well. So like it's just happened to all of them, I think, at this point.
With Tikhonov, he is a good pick. He is a good pick, I think, because of his price, and he's playing on the wing for Arsenal. He was always going to get random rotation. I think the max games I've ever seen him play is around 30, so there's nothing new there. And he can claim penalties. We don't know Campbell's got them because Tikhonov and Albertini weren't on the pitch, and Pires got subbed the same minute, and he often takes them as well. So we're not sure who's got penalties. So Tikhonov could have that in his locker, and therefore could be a reasonable punt because the games are still there. But do you want to bring players in who then just don't, there's a chance they don't play, and there's a higher chance for Tikhonov than some of the other Arsenal players. So I certainly wouldn't be looking to bring him in now, I don't think.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say on the Arsenal, again, I can't really argue against an Arsenal triple up, but the only thing I would say is think about where you're going to put the rest of your money, or where you could put more money, because Ipswich run is incredible too. For longer, I mean, I know Arsenal are a better team, but in terms of purely fixture-wise, Ipswich run is better, I would say, for a little bit longer. And we've already talked loads about the Ipswich defenders and how good they can be and their bonus potential and stuff like that. And obviously they're cheaper. They're only 4.5 million for Tariq and Bramble. Yeah. So you could take out, I mean, Ashley Cole's, I'm not saying don't get Ashley Cole because I have him myself, but it's 2 million difference. It's a lot of money. It can make a big difference up front. And like looking at the fixtures as well for cheaper forwards, yes, of course, their forward can score in any game. But in terms of ideal strikers to go for right now, there's maybe not as many as there was the last few weeks. So that's the only thing I would think about. If you want to put more money elsewhere, Ipswich defenders look pretty good. But I mean, I've got double Ipswich and double Arsenal, so I guess I'm in the best boat. Triple up might just take a bit too much money.
Yeah. I think quite a lot of people have gone for the triple Ipswich. People on Wildcard. I think the guy Gunnar tweets, who is like second. I think he's in second or third. Has got Serini, Bramble, and Tariko, I believe. And Bramble's obviously popping up with goals as well.
Legend.
Yeah. So I think playing all three of those in home to Fulham, home to Villa, home to Southampton is going to end up being value regardless, because even if they concede, which doesn't look particularly likely, they're going to get those bonus and even attacking points. So yeah, it's a good point, Andy. And then you leave that slot for Omri, I think, if you can get there. Missing 13 is such a bummer for Omri. I can't believe you get red cards. He's like one of the most passive players going.
It's like a double whammy though, isn't it? Because you obviously get the red card, so he can't get any points in that game. Plus he gets the minus points, and then he misses a game. And I don't know, in some ways, like it's just psychological, but the fact he gets to play and then misses the next one just seems even more annoying, I think, to me. Because if he missed the next one, all right, I'll just get rid of him or whatever. Because he's going to play, especially if you were looking to bring him in, it just makes the whole situation a bit more annoying. But that is why we play FPL, because it's just fun stuff like that, which
random stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I think if you look at it from the owner's perspective now, I think a lot of people were looking to bring Henry in for that home derby.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring him in now, and if you've got him, you've suddenly got an incredible differential there. Really.
That's true.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. One last question from me. If you had Henry or Van Nistelrooy this week, who would you captain? Van Nistelrooy, Bolton at home, Henry, Derby at home. Just got a red card. Who are you going for?
Okay, I've not looked at Arsenal and Derby in detail. I know they are dreadful, just like Bolton away from home. I would expect this much of a muchness, and they're very, very close. So, because I've run the Sims on the Bolton, and I've seen just how devastating Van Nistelrooy is, I'm going to say Van Nistelrooy. But yeah, if I ran the Sims on Arsenal when he outperformed him, I'd do it.
Nice. Well, fair enough. Plus, Henry will be a massive differential for captaincy, I would say, this week, because everyone's going to go towards Van Nistelrooy. Maybe a few Verons, Beckhams, but be all on Van Nistelrooy. Anything else you want to add before we shut this one down? Shut this one down? That sounded awful. Don't know why I said that, but we'll leave that in.
Well, you sing that song? You got the city on lockdown? Who's that? Who does that?
Oh my God, got the city on lockdown. Isn't that that's a boy band or a girl
it's
group?
Blue.
Blue. Yeah. Of course, because that's what people were singing at the start of lockdown.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
What a great way to end this podcast. Talking about Blue.
Yeah. Let's just end it there. Lock it down, Andy. Let's fade out with some music there.
Yeah. We'll think about that. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see you later, Luke.
See you, mate.